Imagine being minding your business, just another day in the world, when out of nowhere, a cop barges in, handcuffs you, and drags you away in front of everyone. That's exactly what happened to one woman, only no one had any idea who she really was. As the officer tried to make his case, confusion spread like wildfire. People in the courtroom started whispering, unsure what was going on. But then, as the tension reached its peak, the truth came out. The woman wasn't just any random person. She was someone far more important than anyone could have imagined. The room went silent, then erupted. How could they have gotten it so wrong? And what happens when the real story finally comes to light? Stay tuned to see the shocking twist that no one saw coming. To understand how this all started, we need to go back to the moment when the mix-up occurred. The woman, let's call her Maya, had been shopping in a small boutique when things took a sudden turn. The staff had called the police after a misunderstanding over a missing item. They claimed Maya had taken something without paying. But Maya, she was just an ordinary woman trying to enjoy her day. She wasn't even aware of the accusations when the officers arrived at the store. When the arrest happened, everything seemed out of place. The more Maya tried to explain, the more the officers insisted on their mistaken identity. It wasn't until they brought her to the courthouse that things started to take a darker twist. The tension in the air was thick, and you could feel the entire room holding its breath, waiting for the truth to come out. Who was this woman, and why had no one recognized her? As the courtroom buzzed with confusion, the police officers were still confident in their case, but the more Maya spoke, the more it became clear something wasn't right. She kept insisting she had nothing to do with the crime, and yet the accusations weren't letting up. The defense attorney, trying to make sense of the situation, questioned why Maya wasn't offered the chance to explain herself earlier, why no one bothered to check her background thoroughly before bringing her here. Maya's frustration was palpable. It was as though everyone had already decided she was guilty, simply because she fit the vague description. In the audience, whispers spread and the air grew heavy. Some people began to wonder, was this just another case of mistaken identity, or was there something else at play? One woman in the back of the courtroom was certain she had seen Maya somewhere before, but where? The prosecutor seemed undeterred, pushing forward with the case. However, all eyes were still on Maya, who seemed oddly calm despite the situation. Had she been in situations like this before? Why was she not more panicked? It was then that something subtle shifted. Maya looked over at the officer who had arrested her. His face was rigid, but there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes, a flicker of doubt that wasn't there before. But just as the tension reached its peak, the door to the courtroom opened, and the true identity of Maya was about to be revealed in a way no one could have predicted. The room fell silent when the door opened. A figure stepped in, a man dressed in a dark suit, holding a briefcase, his face obscured by the shadows of the courtroom's harsh lights. Maya's eyes flickered to him, and for the first time, her calm demeanor seemed to crack. She straightened in her seat, her gaze fixed on the newcomer. The tension in the room was unbearable. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. The prosecutor, clearly flustered by the unexpected interruption, demanded the man identify himself. Without a word, he walked toward the defense table, opened the briefcase, and pulled out a stack of papers. "You need to listen," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "This woman, Maya, she's not who you think she is, and you've made a terrible mistake." The officers stood frozen, their faces pale, but the prosecutor wasn't backing down. "This is preposterous. We have a case to answer for here." But the man didn't flinch. He reached into his jacket and handed the judge a sealed envelope. The room watched in stunned silence as the judge slowly opened it and read the contents, his eyes widening with each line. Maya sat perfectly still, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a sense of something familiar, something unresolved. What was in that envelope? How did this man know her? And what did he know about the arrest that could turn everything upside down? The courtroom was holding its breath. Time seemed to stretch as the judge looked up at Maya and then back at the prosecutor. Everyone was waiting, wondering if this was the moment that would change everything, or if it would make things worse. Just as the judge was about to speak, a loud bang echoed from the back of the courtroom, an unexpected interruption that jolted everyone. The door slammed open, and two more officers rushed in, but this time they weren't headed toward Maya. They were heading straight for the man with the briefcase. "Stand down," one of them shouted, grabbing the briefcase from his hands. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting, scrambling to understand what was happening. The newcomer's calm facade cracked for just a moment, his eyes narrowing as he tried to pull away, but the officers were too quick. "You have no authority here," he barked, but the tension in the room only grew. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The man was her lawyer, at least, that's what she had thought. But as the officers cuffed him and dragged him to the side, something didn't feel right. Was he really her lawyer, or was he part of something much larger? The prosecutor, who had been sitting quietly until now, stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This is a mockery of the court," he yelled. "You're all wasting my time." But as he spoke, the judge leaned forward, his eyes still glued to the envelope. Something in his expression shifted. Was he starting to put the pieces together? The audience watched, caught between confusion and disbelief. Maya's past was starting to unravel, but it wasn't clear who was pulling the strings. The stakes had just skyrocketed. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Everyone was asking themselves, was Maya the victim here, or was there something more sinister at play? Had she been set up, or was she hiding something that could change everything? The courtroom fell into an eerie silence as the officers took the man away, his eyes locked on Maya in an almost apologetic way. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what was happening, but the look on his face confirmed one thing. This wasn't some simple misunderstanding. This had been planned. The judge finally stood, his gavel ringing out, cutting through the tension. "I would adjourn this case until further investigation," he declared, but his voice was laced with uncertainty. Just as he was about to leave, Maya stood up, her voice cutting through the room. "Wait, I need to speak." Everyone turned to look at her. Maya took a deep breath, knowing that whatever she said next would either destroy or reveal the truth. "The man you arrested, he wasn't my lawyer. He's my brother, and I'm not just anyone." A murmur swept through the courtroom, but Maya wasn't finished. She locked eyes with the prosecutor and then the officers, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I've been in witness protection for 5 years. I've been hiding from someone who wants me dead. That's why I couldn't tell you who I really was." The room went silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The prosecutor's smug expression faltered, and the officers exchanged confused glances. "What?" one of them whispered, but Maya wasn't finished. "I know what you've been told. You think I'm guilty. But someone planted that accusation against me. I've been set up. You need to look deeper into the case, into the people who orchestrated this." The judge looked at her with wide eyes, but just as he was about to speak, the doors swung open again. This time, it wasn't a figure who entered. It was a woman, dressed in a sleek black suit, her face a mask of calm determination. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room, and without missing a beat, she pointed directly at Maya. "That's the woman you should be looking for," she said coldly, and the entire courtroom went dead silent. Maya froze. What? What do you mean?" The woman didn't answer directly, instead pulling out a folder from her briefcase and holding it up. Inside was a photograph of Maya's face, but it wasn't recent. It was years old, taken long before Maya had ever entered witness protection. This woman was once a key player in a much bigger operation, but she disappeared, until now. And in that moment, the world shifted once again. Maya wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was being hunted, and the people who had made this mistake knew more than anyone realized. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As the woman's words hung in the air, the courtroom was flooded with disbelief. Maya's heart raced, but she knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was bigger than any mistake or misidentification. This was about her past catching up with her, the lies she'd lived with for years, and the dangerous truth now coming to light. The woman who had entered was a federal agent, and it turned out Maya had been part of a massive witness protection case, hidden for her own safety after turning against a dangerous criminal syndicate. The room slowly began to understand the gravity of the situation. The prosecutor, once so sure of his case, now looked unsure. The charges against Maya were dropped immediately, and she was escorted out of the courtroom in a protective detail. As the door closed behind her, the world outside remained uncertain, but Maya's fight was far from over. The truth had been uncovered, but at what cost? Would she ever truly be free? The questions lingered as the courtroom doors closed, leaving the audience with one undeniable truth: sometimes the past never really stays buried.